episode. For those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your comments down below, share the video with anyone that you think is interested. All that helps with the algorithms. And same for those listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the podcasting platforms. Please follow, give us a 5-star review. All of that stuff helps us grow the podcast and get it out to more viewers and listeners. But let's get on to my team, because we had a real stinker. Because I think 1-1 at Fulham is slightly respectable. Losing 3-2 at home to Forest, not so much. So yeah, United lose 2-3 to Nottingham Forest. All my preview and analysis I gave last week was absolute balls, because I said I wasn't that worried about their attack, and they banged 3 on us. But yeah, they took an early lead again from a corner. So, while you guys get all the praise for the corners, I think we might need to have a conversation a bit later in the pod about us defending from corners, because for some reason we put Lisandro Martinez on Milinkovic, who's an absolute unit, and no wonder he smashes the header in, and they take the lead. To be fair, though, we obviously didn't watch the match live because we were, go-karting and whatever with the lads. But watching the game back afterwards, it did look like we came back in that first half and responded quite well. Boylan with the tap in, making it 1-1 after a decent worked move. But second half, though, I don't know what happened. Suddenly the game exploded. 2 quick goals early on. Gibbs White scoring to make it 2-1. Anana, absolute stinker. And then Wood makes it 3-1 with, what looked like one of the slowest goals I've ever seen in my life. It literally trickled in. So it's 3-1, and then Bruno pulls one back with a curling effort. But yeah, to be honest, we watched that point onwards live, and it didn't really look like we were going to score. Right, I know Alessandro put one over the bar from a corner, and there were a few little semi-half chances, I guess. But I think Forest were never really under threat, and they come away with a win 3-2. If we go on the XG narrative and everything like that, and look at all the stats and facts, it points towards us perhaps being a bit hard done by, and us, maybe at least deserving a draw, if not a win. But the result is the result. We lose 3-2. From a United perspective, I think all 3 goals we gave away are poor, right? They're all preventable. I think the second one is the most preventable, obviously. But I think the other 2 are just as poor in terms of our defence. I think Lisandro is obviously majorly culpable for the first one. And I even think for the third one, him and Onana need to sort themselves out. You can't be conceding a goal that trickles in at the back post. I'm not going to put blame on Yoro, because, like we talked about at the time, you can get beaten in the air by Chris Wood. It happens religiously to most of the best centre-backs in the league, right? He's an absolute man mountain. And he's basically this generation's Kevin Davies, right? When it comes to getting his head on
that's
stuff.
That's disrespectful to Chris Wood, but okay.
Yeah, I know you got your Kevin Davies hate, but I'm fuming and livid about all the goals we conceded. I'm not massively discouraged about the way we were playing. I do think there was some sloppiness from Bruno. I think our centre backs could have done better. Generally, also on the ball, I don't think they were good enough playing out. I think Garnacho frustrated still. I think Ogate was all right, and I feel like he had one of his better games. I thought Delo was a bit better again than he has been in recent weeks, but it's still not up to standard. But I did see sprouts and shoots of positivity in terms of gameplay. But ultimately, we need results, man. We're 13th in the table. We're still got positive goal difference, thank God. So people can't batter me with that. But we're not looking good, and we've got a really tough run of fixtures coming up. So, 2 wins in a week. It's not looking good. But what do you think, John? Obviously, as a rival opinion, what did you make of the game and the result?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I was busy doing something else at the time, so I didn't see the full game. But obviously, I've watched the highlights since. I think it was. I don't think it was a game of the highest quality, but it kind of feels like prime Barclays type football in terms of it wasn't the prettiest thing to watch, but a lot of goals were scored and it was relatively exciting. I think honestly, from a Man United perspective, I don't think you should be conceding any of those goals. think they're all pretty poor. And I think your goals scored were, I mean, better. I think the first goal, even though it was a tap in, I think the things leading up to the tap in were pretty well worked. It was some nice little kind of one touch play from your midfielders and cams. The second goal, I also think, was a pretty decent finish. I think Sells maybe could get a better hand on it, but it is quite, powerfully hit. So I understand why he couldn't necessarily get it out. But yeah, the 3 goals that you conceded, I think you should be ashamed of all of them. I don't think they're good. I think yeah, no, and from that's why I'd say, like, you should feel not hard done by, but you should feel like, man, we lost that. Like, we didn't, not they won it, we lost that. Like, that was our fault. We messed that up. So I think from Amorim's point of view as well, he's going to have to look into that team and think, like, yeah, maybe attacking, I can get them scoring, I can get them playing better football, but am I going to be able to get them to defend better than this? And I'm not going to say like Sporting were a terrible defensive team, but they were clearly like attacks more important, attacks first. Let's try and like smash goals in, and let's see, on the other end, let's see what we can do. I'm hoping that he's going to have to come into that with a bit more structure or tactic to really sort this defense out, because you don't have so far you're not having like outstanding individual performances that are saving you, right? Like, oh, actually, wait, no, Onana has had a couple of outstanding performances that have saved you, but I don't think you can rely on that full time going forward. I think he's going to have to figure something out in that defense, get them playing better together, get them more organized from set pieces, etc., etc. Because if you keep conceding goals like that, I don't think Man United fans are going to be happy at all, because those were poor. It's very different if someone slaps it in the top corner, right? And the funniest thing is that like the other chances that Nottingham Forest had would have been way better goals. Like that Jota Silva like crazy header that he gets in and hits the bar with, like that was good. But the ones that they ended up actually scoring stank. So yeah,
even that though, that was from issues, a set piece too.
Yeah,
you got to defend better from that. I agree with you completely, man. While in your game you look at it and there's like minor details have led to a goal, with ours it's the most obvious, crystal clear, poor defensive play, something that you shouldn't be, giving up. And yeah, I mean, we've had those like kind of slightly shaky moments against lesser teams in the first couple of games of Amorim's reign, but we kind of got away with it. Against Forest, who I'm not saying are the best team in the world, but they're better than Bodo Glimt, for example, right? You get punished. And yeah, man, I just think it's poor. So defending set pieces is clearly a big issue, because we've conceded 3 in a week. And then I would even, the Chris Wood one wasn't a set piece, but it almost feels set piece-ish. And so we've got to work on that. But you know what I will say, and I am Amorim Defence League, as you know, John's from a group chat and everything like that. Organisation and giving people instruction. I feel like doing things from set pieces defensively is when you get into the real details, right? Like, I think if you look at Arteta and what you guys have done, you guys weren't phenomenal at set pieces at the beginning. It's almost become something you've been able to develop now in this latter part of his reign, right? When you've got more time with the players and you can get into the fine details. And Amorim's had 3 weeks. So I expected us to be vulnerable at certain stages. It's still very, very frustrating that it's happened in quick succession, right? Because you would think after the Arsenal game, that is like a lecture
under the spotlight,
a dedicated lecture on how to defend better on set pieces when you concede that many goals from set pieces and also concede that many chances. You think that would be the one thing you'd kind of stamp out in the next game, but obviously that's not the case. But I do think, there's question marks that are being raised around Amorim's rotation, even by our own GNev. I want to smash that down straight away quickly, right? Maybe you disagree and we can get into it, but he's got to play all the players. He's just got in the team. He doesn't know who he wants to keep and who he wants to get rid of. He has to play all of them. And we've got a situation like you guys playing in Europe midweek and then weekend, and now going through this Christmas period where we'll also have the Carabao, the FA Cup, and all that kind of stuff. We have to play all our players. So I don't want to hear GNev waffle about us continuing to play the same players week in, week out, needing to have the same starting 11. That's all good and well in August and September when you got one game a week, or in April and May if you're knocked out of the cups, but not in December, January, February when you've got a game every 2 or 3 days. You've got to rotate, and even more so if you're a new manager and you want to see everyone and give everyone a fair crack, and make decisions based on who you want to keep and who you want to sell at the end of the season. So I don't want to hear that from G-Nev or anyone else out there moaning and starting to get onto Amram about rotating. You've got to rotate. He's got to do that. All right, certain games it might look a bit crazy if you've got Xerxes and Rashford scoring 2 goals and then they're not in the next game, or Ahmad scoring a goal and not being in the next game, or whatever. I understand it, but the same principle applies. You've got to rotate the team, and you've got to keep them fresh. We can't complain about injuries on one hand and then complain about us rotating the team too much on the other. Like, you can't have those being mutually exclusive. They come as a package deal, and they're normally one as a result of the other. So I don't want to hear that. I think that's unfair, right? Could he be doing things better in these games that we lost? Sure, right? There's definitely things that he could be doing better, but I still look more at the players. I still look more at, the performances and the errors that people are making on the pitch more than Amram. He's been there for 5 minutes in the grand scheme of things. I'm not going to get on to him. Certainly not now, and most likely not even later in the season. He's come into a terrible situation, and we'll get onto it now. The news that Dan Ashworth has mutually agreed to leave the club. Absolute show. How can you be leaving after 5 months when we had to wait 5 months to get you in the first place? He's been in the job less time than he was on gardening leave. It's an absolute disgrace. You've paid Newcastle 2 to 3 million, not the bloody 10 that all the Newcastle, the content creators and aggregators went out and tried to say to cover face, right? And Chew Geordie and all those guys. It was between 2 and 3 million, but we've let go of him already. I don't know if you've seen it, Johns. I know you shared some stuff about the Athletic and read the article, but it seems like it's a United and a club-driven decision. It doesn't seem like it is actually mutually agreed. It seems like he's been let go. A lot of chatter around him being involved in keeping Ten Hag at the end of the season in that decision. He denies it. I think he came out and said he wasn't involved, but a lot of people around the club saying he was. And then a lot of the news going out there that he wanted Gareth Southgate or Graham Potter or Eddie Howe, or basically a British coach, to replace Ten Hag when the decision was made. And he didn't back the decision to get Amram. So I think it makes us look absolutely stinky. It sets off the alarms around Ineos and their decision making now. It's not a good look on them. We've talked about the PR around them for a little bit, so that continues. But yeah, what do you make of this Dan Ashworth stuff, and where do you think the blame should be put at around it?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I heard some rumors, or I've been reading some stuff from Laurie Whitwell and the various different kind of reporters, the ITKs and stuff, about how they expected him to be a better, like, transfer focused guy. Like, he was going to be able to scout these players and this player and get that person in and get this person in. And apparently, like, everyone should have known that he's more of like an operational type of guy. He's more about the structure, setting up the right people, getting the right people in the right positions, and operating well, versus being like a transfer focused guy and being kind of more like an Edwards from Liverpool type of thing. So that's part of it. It kind of sounds like, from what I've seen, and you can kind of make it sense of it if you think about it, like, you love this guy so much that you go and take him from another club, you wait 5 months to do so, then 5 months into the job you get rid of him. It's very clear that you maybe are realizing he is not what you thought he was. And so that's kind of, it keeps coming back to me as kind of maybe what has happened here, that Ineos have realized, or Ratcliffe specifically has realized, oh, he's not the guy I thought he was going to be. I've been missold a little bit here on Dan Ashworth. I think the fact that he was at Newcastle and they are a very English team, I think you should probably realise that, yeah, maybe that was how he was going to be. But then obviously, I mean, maybe his past at Brighton might have put you onto something else. I think from my point of view, it's just like, there's a clear breakdown in due diligence here, right? Like, if you fire anyone that quickly, the blame is either entirely like the blame is shared between both of you. But I think for the most part in this situation, it's the blame has to be placed on the club, on the ownership, because I think Dan Ashworth is a pretty well known quantity. I think he's pretty revered in the industry. It wouldn't have taken you very long to figure out who he was. You should have done better due diligence onto what he was and who he was. You should have done a longer. You had 5 months while he was on gardening leave to try and figure out what he's going to do, how he's going to fit into this. Like, it stinks that after 5 months you get rid of him, because it just goes to show, from my point of view, that you either didn't do good enough due diligence to figure out who he was, or you changed your mind halfway through and decided you want something else. Like, either of those two situations, you stink. So I think it looks terrible for the club. I think you would like, it's just constant news and constant craziness coming from the Man United team. It's like almost a reality show at this point, and I wonder if they're doing like an Amazon documentary in the background and trying to pump up some stuff to make it like the highest viewed video of all time or something. Because I can't believe how much stuff comes out of your club 24/7. You're just getting a new manager after sacking your last manager, who was, had a crazy summer where you were interviewing other people in front of him, and then he's telling you that you interrupted his holiday. Like, there's so much mess going on at this club. You just get in what appears to be a pretty good manager. It looks like things are going to go well again, and then 2 weeks later, you've sacked your big guy that all your fans have been talking about. Like, yeah, we've got Ashworth. Where, like, come on, man. Like, what are you guys doing? Read the room. Could you have waited till Christmas? Could you have waited until the end of the season? Could you have waited until it wasn't right after you just lost to Arsenal and then you just lost to Nottingham Forest? Like, can you read the room? You've just put the kids' tickets up from £17 to 66 or whatever it is, sacked off a bunch of dinner ladies, and got rid of Sorrell, and you're not giving anyone lunchboxes anymore. Like, read the room, guys. Like, everybody loves writing about you. It's very clear that Ratcliffe has never gone on Google before and looked at like the Google News thing for Man United. He's clearly never read The Athletic before. Like, get your head out your ass and figure out that you're one of the most followed teams in the world. Stop feeding them. Right, Dan Ashworth, you could have just stuck him in a corner somewhere and let what's his name, Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada just run the show and said, hey mate, just go over there and do something else. You could have sent him to South America and said, go and scout someone for us. You could have done something else. Just not this. This is poor. So Jim Ratcliffe,
go find the
you,
next
mate.
Vinny Jr. for us.
Exactly. Go and do something else. Like, bog off, right? Or send them to like your feeder club somewhere and say, hey, go and build our network, do a Jurgen Klopp or something, right? Like, just why is it that you've done it in this way? Because like, you had a really low bar with the Glazers, but you're getting close to. I mean, if you keep on the way that you're doing for the next like couple of years, no one will be able to tell the difference. You'll all be lumped together as stinky Man United owners, because what's happening right now is honestly the poorest showing of ownership I've seen. And it's starting to make sense why Nice also didn't go so well either, because these lot are nuts.
Yeah, the thing is, I will say they've got. I know people are out there comparing them to the Glazers and whatever, and I understand that these decisions that have been making, especially since the summer, have been brazy. But we still can't get close to the Glazers yet, right? Like, the Glazers are probably institutionally the worst owners I've ever known in the Premier League, right? They make Mike Ashley look like a dedicated owner, though. They make Mike look dedicated. Mike put more money in than the Glazers did, and didn't straddle Newcastle with a bunch of debt, right? And he was a terrible owner, but that's what these guys have done to us. And while I agree, and the passions jokes on this situation from you, but I do agree with that. Like, we've talked about Ashworth quite a lot on this pod, and we have not done that for any other exec, right? Or very few of them, right? Maybe a little bit on Edu, but that's about it. We've gone big on Ashworth. The United fans have gone big on him, and we've not done. This is, I think, it's unthinkable. I don't think anyone expected this, so it's unreal. But what I would say is, last point before we go into the previews real quick, is this feels personal the way that things have gone. So I've seen some things about Ashworth bumping heads with Sir Jim, and I think there's got to be some credence in that, because you don't do this. The way it was done, it was cold. It was callous. It was like there was something personal behind it. So I think it just hasn't worked out, and they've made this decision. Whether it's the right one or not, we'll only know. But PR wise, it's very smelly, and Ineos have to do better on that side, because otherwise, it's not going to be long before, you know. Well, people are already chanting your Glazers in disguise, right? So they've got to work on that if they want this to be successful.